It worked. It worked. It worked. Welcome to another, it's a Mental Health Monday Live. I haven't done one of these in quite a while, but I was inspired by my friend Kate Meyer, who will be my guest today for Mental Health Monday, because she started doing Mental Health Mondays as well. And we were like, look, this is a common thing. She's an author and she's also a licensed counselor as well. And she's got a book coming out called Faith Does Not Erase Grief. And I have questions for her about grief because it's something that we all deal with. And it's not just losing somebody to death. So we'll get into that shortly. I wanted to take a quick moment and thank you for liking and subscribing to this broadcast and being here. I'm not sure if you follow me on my Riggs Radio page or on the Hardhead page, but if you do or do not know, Hardhead is a nonprofit organization that I have founded myself. Riggs, yeah, I need to get better at talking about myself because I don't do that a lot. But if you don't talk about yourself, people aren't going to know about what you're doing, and they're not going to know about our mission. And throughout the last year or so, I've been taking a course in positive psychology. And as of today, actually, today is the day that I got certified to be a positive psychology coach. Like today was the graduation that we had. So yeah, I just thought about that. Well, I should probably be more excited about that, right? Completing the course. But it was about a year long, and I wanted to be a mental health life coach and kind of help people troubleshoot through their emotions with their mental health. And then I got to a point where I had to price this out. And I was like, what am I going to charge for something like this? And I looked into pricing and I was like, God, it can be expensive to see a therapist or a coach. And I went, is this what keeps some people from going to therapy? And it turns out, yes, a lot of people don't seek out professional help, A, because of stigma. There's still a stigma around seeing a psychologist or a therapist or a psychiatrist. And B, sometimes people don't have the financial means because insurance has so many red tape that you have to jump through. Sometimes you have to meet a deductible before they'll pay for mental health because it's a specialist. So I founded a nonprofit that helps people pay for therapy. So now we can remove that as an excuse for seeking out help for therapy, because I think that's a dumb reason to not get mental health care because you can't afford it. So heartheadhelps.org is the website. You probably are already watching on the stream. Thank you very much for following along. Our big event is this Saturday, our first fundraiser. It's called Meat Fest, no vegetables allowed, except for vegetables in the Bloody Mary cart, which will be there. It's downtown in the 3rd Ward of Milwaukee. And all the information is on the Hardhead event page. You can find it right there. So thank you for watching. Thank you for joining. And if you can make it out to Meat Fest this weekend, I'd love to see you. And now welcome to the screen, my guest for today, Kate Meyer. Hello, Kate.
Hello, Riggs. How are you?
Good. I've been a
Good.
fan of following you along for probably the last year or so, maybe a couple years, because we both started doing something special on Mondays for mental health. And you
Yeah.
have a background in psychology, and you're also an author. So tell people that may not know a lot about you a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. So first, I was ordained as a minister in the Reformed Church, which is a Christian denomination.
By the way, you're a
Then,
female minister, which is awesome because there are very few of you out there. So I love
yeah, yeah. Thank you. And then I got my counseling license because there's just a whole lot seminary does not prepare you for when trying to support people's mental health. And so I needed to broaden that and to feel better prepared to help people navigate some pretty tough stuff. So I started writing fiction. I self-published a novel, and then my career kind of evolved, and now I'm part of what I do is a bereavement counselor. So I work with people who are grieving all week long. And so it's from that work that I really found how passionate I was about this particular part of mental health, because there's just so much our society doesn't do well when it comes to grief.
yeah,
And, you know, absolutely, there is still a huge stigma with seeking mental health help. Um, and so,
I just wanted to give you this. I wanted to give you the stage.
oh, oh no. Um, so that stigma for sure is still there. And within grief itself, especially for grief, like you were naming, the non-death grief,
Oh
boy,
yeah,
I mean, there's barely support for people who are grieving human loss. When you talk about any other kind of loss, there's barely recognition, let alone help out there.
sure.
Yeah.
Well, we think about other things that we lose, like the loss of a relationship, going through a divorce or a breakup. That's grief. You're grieving the loss
Yes.
of something that you had. You
Yes.
lose a job, like that's something that you had. We were grieving our way of life when COVID hit because
Yes.
we had to pull everything out from under the carpet. Like we were grieving our former way of life, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Yeah. I think the pandemic really highlighted how poorly mental health is treated in general, but also how poorly grief is recognized because, I mean, everybody was grieving in some way, shape, or form, whether it was life or just situations, right? So much job loss, so much isolation, so much relationship, tension, division,
Oh, yeah.
change, loss, etc.
People who had
Um,
days where they got to go their separate ways were now forced to be together all the time.
yes,
And
yeah,
relationships didn't hold the test of time,
yeah,
unfortunately.
yeah. So, I mean, I think the good thing that came out of that is, I get flyers every day in my mailbox of telehealth people saying we need more therapists, we need more therapists. So, what's encouraging, I mean, it's sad that we need more. What's encouraging about that to me, though, is more people are seeking it because telehealth had to advance really fast. Um, Insurance, as you well know, is not quite on board yet with telehealth. And so organizations like the nonprofit you have started, that's why they're so important because if telehealth is going to give people the safety to get the help they need, then we need to figure out a way to fund it. And we need to figure out a way for people to be able to access it.
Yeah, it shouldn't
Yeah.
cripple people, you know? You shouldn't have to decide between
Yeah.
finding out if I'm gonna put food on my table and pay for my children to have what they need, or am I gonna take care of my mental health? Because
Right.
the more you neglect that and put your mental health on the back burner and just don't fill your cup, you're making it
Yeah.
worse for
Oh,
yourself the longer
yeah.
you put that off the whole process.
Yeah.
And I'm glad there's
100%.
people out there like you who are counselors that have seen that need and are stepping up.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what one thing that I like about your book, I know you're a minister and you have a lot of faith values with you as well. You're a spiritual person,
Yeah.
and book the title alone. I'm kind of surmising what it might be about, and it's
Mhm.
how I mean I was raised Catholic, brought up
Mhm.
Catholic boy, and a lot of religions are very much into you can pray it away. It's just something you're
Mhm.
going through. Just get right with God, say your
Yep.
prayers, say a couple rosaries, go to church, go to mass, and that's going to help you. When in
Yeah.
fact, while I think religion is a great coping skill, a very positive coping skill, the sense of community, the sense of belonging, a lot of times that's not the only thing that can help you. And I think
Right.
that's kind of where your book comes from. So is that what?
Yeah. Yeah. It primarily comes from the sheer volume of people who have sat across from me and said, "I really miss my person, and that's wrong because I should be happy that they're in heaven." And I'm just like, who who's telling you this? And don't go to that church anymore. Stop listening to those people. Um, but it happened and continues to happen so frequently. Um, some variation of that, whether clearly I'm not praying properly. Um, Clearly I don't have enough faith. I'm not allowed to miss them. All of these just terrible things. And what I have come really to see and believe is that we have people who are trained. We have psychologists and psychiatrists and therapists and life coaches. We have all of these things because we're meant to help each other. We're not meant to just be like, you're fine. Just think about heaven. Well, yes. Okay. So if that's where my person is, that's fine, but I'm still here. I still have to live life here and I still have to figure out how to do life without that person physically present anymore. Um, and so that's where it came from. That's
I
where
like
it came from.
What's one of the biggest misconceptions about grief, other than what we've talked about? Are there other misconceptions that you've seen about how people deal with grief, kind of as a counselor?
Yeah, I think a, to me the biggest one is that grief has an end point. that if I can just follow this map, everything will be fine. If I just do these things, right? So the very well-intended stages of grief that Kubler-Ross put out forever ago that weren't actually meant for grieving people, by the way, they were meant for dying people, but that's a whole nother thing. They've been so misconstrued for people to think that if I just go through each of these things, then I'll be fine. And my grief will be over. And that's just not what it is. It's about kind of moving through the grief to relocate it so that it becomes smaller, it becomes less intense, it decreases in frequency, intensity, duration, but it's still there, right? We still hold them, we still connect with our person, sometimes in really surprising, beautiful ways, sometimes in really heart-wrenching ways. I know you're a This Is Us fan. I did not watch last week's episode yet, so you just shush. I know what's coming, though.
Oh, it's coming.
Probably part of the reason.
The trains are coming.
The trains are coming.
Yes.
Yeah, and then tomorrow. But anyway? So I think that's the biggest one is just tell me what to do so I can get over it, and it's more about adapting.
Yeah.
And learning how to grow through it, and let yourself go through it. Our tendency, we teach children from a very young age, as we should, don't touch that hot stove. It's going to hurt you.
Yeah.
Great rule within life. Grief is the opposite of that, though. It's painful, but you have to go to it. You have to touch it.
Yeah.
And wade through it.
We touched earlier on the other types of grief, like grieving the loss of a relationship or grieving the loss of a job. A lot of people have lost jobs and things like that. Is there a different way of dealing with that grief? Maybe because that's kind of how is that different? I mean, I know it's the same, but how would we grieve a job loss differently or a relationship loss differently? Because they're gone forever. They're just gone in the moment.
Right. I think the first step really is validation. So human loss, grief, people validate that pretty quickly. Like, yeah, wow, that must be really hard. But we invalidate our own non-death losses. Like we minimize all the time of, I don't know why this is bothering me so much. Well, your whole life shifted. Retirement is a really popular one that people don't understand. You are grieving an entire career, whether you changed jobs throughout that, you're grieving an entire phase of your life. Like it's okay to be sad about it and to wonder about it. And so I think that's the first way that it's different, is that we just don't allow ourselves to go there, to name it as grief. But once we do, then a lot of it is the same. It's giving name to all of the emotions. I think as adults, we aren't great at emotions. We learn to not have tantrums, but we don't learn what to do instead.
Yeah.
So when it comes to non-death grief, it's really about giving it the attention that it needs to have.
We do that so much. You're so right about us minimizing our own problems because we know that other people have it worse. Yeah. Other people have things that you don't want to burden someone else with my problems. Someone else, my friend just lost their mother. I mean, why would I be upset about losing my job? My friend just lost their mother. Like I'm not, who am I to grieve? Who am I to be upset? But everyone's grief is valid. And I think everyone grieves differently. Everyone has a different journey through the whole process. And I don't think it ever ends grief. I think it just kind of, you learn to deal with it in different ways. I've seen all sorts of analogies about waves, how the waves get smaller, but still there, or the beach ball is still there. And there's so many analogies out there for grief.
Yeah.
What's something interesting, like maybe some parting words you would give to somebody as we kind of wrap up our discussion about grief today?
Let yourself feel what you need to feel. Emotions are not negative. They are not positive. They just are. So whatever you feel, you let yourself feel it. What matters is the expression. So there are negative ways to express emotions that harm yourself or harm other people. But the emotions themselves are perfectly valid. So let yourself express them and explore them. Try and figure out what the root of it is and see if you can't dig it up a little bit.
And I think if you're struggling with it, it's okay to reach out and ask for help to somebody like you
Always,
who can help.
always.
If you feel like it's been dragging for long and wondering if it's normal, maybe ask somebody. Don't just shove it.
Yeah. Always ask for help and look. I really encourage people look for reputable places, right? Look at what somebody's credentials are. Look at how they approach things, right? So life coaches have a lot of different approaches that they can take.
Sure.
You want to know what that is because it might not. The reason for the variety is because we're all different types of people. So find the person that you match with, and when you get into therapy, if you're not clicking with your therapist, stop and get a different one.
Bingo. I know so many people who have stuck with a therapist they don't like, and it just makes
Ah,
them hate going to therapy, and then
yeah,
they're not benefiting from it at all. I think any therapist would agree, they want you to get something out of it.
yes,
Ooh, they want you to get better. They want you to feel whole again and to appreciate
yeah,
your life, but they don't want you to be in there if you don't like them, and they're not gonna take it to
right,
heart. They're not,
right,
because they know
right,
there's other ones out there. And you're
right,
right, different
right.
practices. There's different therapists that focus on grief or anxiety or PTSD or eating
Yeah,
disorders. There's different coaches as well for
yes,
life coaches, executive coaches. I'm a coach that focuses on positive psychology. So ours
yeah,
is all about the science of human flourishing and working on what's strong instead of what's wrong. So we kind of build
yeah,
on strengths. And that's how I'd go as a positive psychology guy.
yeah,
So it's about
yeah,
finding what works best for you. And
yeah,
your book, I think, is going to be amazing for people that are very spiritual and very religious and to kind of open their mind to the world of psychology and seeking out
yeah,
other avenues for help.
yeah, yeah.
And it's coming out this summer, correct?
It is July, mid-July. We're
Mid-July.
looking at.
It's
Yeah,
already written and everything
it's it's written. Final proof is happening. I've been told I can no longer read it and find things.
because you'll go and find every little thing and change the little
Yeah,
words.
yeah.
Good.
Just gotta let it go now.
Nice. Well, Kate
Yeah,
Meyer, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. Looking
yeah.
forward
Thank
to your book.
you.
We also have other books that are out that you can find on our website. The Red Couch is a
Yes,
very popular one. Um,
yeah. Thank you.
thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate
Yes, thank you.
it. All right. And I'll
Excellent.
hopefully see everybody else watching in Milwaukee at Meat Fest this weekend.
Yes,
I'd
I
love to
would
see you out
take
there.
the ferry across if I could.
Our first fundraiser, so it'd be great to see everybody out there. We actually have our first person that we're going to be able to help pay for therapy. So we'll get to meet her and hear her story on Saturday. So that's cool.
That's awesome.
Nice. Kate Meyer, thank you so
All
much for
right.
your time today.
Thanks, Riggs. I appreciate it.
Happy Mental Health Monday and happy Mental Health Month.
Yes.